sir. The chandelier above La Luna Rossa caught the last of the evening light filtering through the tall windows, scattering gold flecks across white tablecloths and half-empty wine glasses. The restaurant was alive in that soft, expensive wailo laughter from a corner booth, the clink of silverware, the murmur of Italian jazz from hidden speakers. It was the kind of place where deals were sealed over tiramisu and no one ever raised their voice. Marco Vitale walked in alone. No black SUVs idling at the curb, no men in dark coats trailing him. Just Marco 38, broad-shouldered, charcoal suit cut sharp enough to cut glass. His dark hair was swept back, jaw clean-shaven, eyes the color of storm clouds over the Tyrrhenian Sea. He moved through the room like he owned the air itself. Conversations dipped, then recovered, the way water ripples around a stone. He took his usual booth in the far corner, the one with the best view of both entrances and no blind spots. The host didn't even ask, he simply nodded and pulled the velvet rope aside. Marco slid in, loosened his tie by exactly one notch, and opened the menu he knew by heart. Across the dining room near the swinging doors to the kitchen, Elena Moretti wiped down a high-top table that didn't need wiping. 29, dark curls escaping a loose bun. Black dress under a crisp white apron. She moved with the quiet economy of someone who had learned early that drawing attention was rarely safe. 3 years at La Luna Rossa, sir. Never late. Never complained. Customers liked her because she remembered names and never hovered. Staff liked her because she never gossiped. Tonight the place was fuller than usual a Friday. Good weather, tourists mixing with regulars. Elena refilled water pitchers, cleared bread baskets, smiled when required. Invisible until needed. Marco's server brought his usual, barolo, poured without flourish, then the osso buco, cooked low and slow until the meat fell from the bone. He ate slowly, eyes on the slim leather folder beside his plate. Inside, the contract, 80 pages of real estate legalese for a waterfront redevelopment in Red Hook. $150 million changing hands on Monday if he signed tonight. His consigliere had already called twice. Everything checks out. Funds wired from Zurich, clean on paper. Marco trusted the man like a brother, but something still gnawed at the back of his mind. The Russian partners had been too eager, too many smiles, too many assurances. He flipped to the signature page, gold Mont Blanc pen in hand, thumb resting on the cap. That was when Elena approached. She carried a small silver tray with a single espresso saucer and a folded linen napkin, either of which he had ordered. She set it down without a word, then leaned in just far enough that her voice reached only him. "This is fake," she said. The words were in Sicilian, not the smooth, tourist-friendly Italian most people spoke in New York, not even the softer Palermo, sir. Accent. This was the old dialect guttural, full of rolled R's and swallowed vowels. The language his grandmother had whispered when she tucked him in as a boy, the one used for secrets, curses, and warnings that carried across generations. Marco's pen froze midair. The restaurant kept moving. Someone laughed at a nearby table. A cork popped. Glasses touched, but for Marco the world narrowed to the space between them. Her eyes were dark hazel, steady, unflinching. No fear, no hesitation, just quiet certainty. "Don't sign," she continued, still in that same low, urgent Sicilian. "They're planning to pull the money after the wire clears. Shell companies, backdoor, transfers. You'll wake up Monday with nothing and they'll make it look like you tried to run." She straightened, smoothed her apron, and turned away as if she'd only asked if he wanted dessert. Marco didn't breathe for several seconds. He watched her walk back toward the pass, shoulders relaxed, pace even, like she hadn't just dropped a grenade into his evening. The pen slipped from his fingers and rolled across the tablecloth. The contract remained open, untouched. Around him, the room carried on. No one had heard. No one had seen anything unusual. Just a waitress doing her job. But Marco's pulse thundered in his ears. He closed the folder, slowly, deliberately. Then he signaled for the check, left $300 in cash on the table, far more than the villain stood. As he passed the kitchen doors, he caught one last glimpse of her. Elena, sleeves rolled to her elbows, stacking plates with mechanical grace. She didn't look up. Outside, the night air was sharp with early autumn bite. His driver waited at the curb, engine idling. Marco waved him off. He walked, past Washington Square, past the lights of Bleecker Street, hands in pockets, mind racing. That voice, that dialect. Nobody spoke it like that anymore, not in public, not in Manhattan, not to a stranger who happened to be Marco Vitale. Who the hell was she? And how did she know? Marco didn't sleep that night. He paced the penthouse living room floor-to-ceiling windows framing the glittering sprawl of Manhattan below while the city stayed awake and indifferent. The contract sat on the glass coffee table like an unexploded device. He hadn't touched it since leaving the restaurant. Every time he looked at it, he heard her voice again. This is fake, raw Sicilian, low and certain, cutting through 20 years of polished English and careful Italian like a blade through silk. By 3 a.m. he was on the phone with Luca, his consigliere since they were teenagers back in Palermo. Elena Moretti, Marco said without preamble. Waitress at La Luna Rossa, 29. Sicilian roots, run everything. Luca didn't ask why. He never did. Give me an hour. Marco poured another espresso black. No Sugaran stood at the window watching headlights crawl across the Brooklyn Bridge. The deal was supposed to close in 48 hours. 150, sir. Million. Enough to push the family's legitimate portfolio into the next decade. Enough to make enemies very happy if it disappeared. The report came faster than expected. Luca's voice was calm, almost bored. Elena Moretti, born Palermo, moved to Brooklyn at 8 after her parents died in a hit-and run. Grandmother raised her until the old woman passed 6 years ago. No arrests, no warrants, no red flags. Social security traces clean. Bank account modest, mostly tips and salary. Lives in a walk-up in Greenpoint. No social media worth mentioning. Works doubles at the restaurant. Picks up occasional catering gigs. That's it. Marco rubbed the bridge of his nose. Family? None living that we can find. Grandmother was the last. Old-school Sicilian widow of a small-time importer who died in the 80s. No ties to any of the families here or back home. Marco exhaled. She spoke the dialect like she was born in Agrigento in 1950. A pause on Luca's end. You sure it was her? I'm sure. Another pause. Want me to bring her in? No. Marco's voice was sharper than he intended. Not yet. Just keep eyes on her. Discreet. He hung up and stared at his reflection in the dark glass. He looked tired, not the kind of tired that came from lack of sleep. The deeper kind. The next evening he went back. Not to the booth. He chose a stool at the far end of the bar, ordered a Negroni, and watched. Elena moved through the dining room like water never hurried, never still. She smiled at her. An elderly couple celebrating 50 years refilled a water glass for a table of hedge fund guys, carried 3 plates balanced on one arm without breaking stride. Once, she laughed at something the sommelier said quiet, genuine, and Marco felt an unfamiliar twist in his chest. When her section cleared for a moment, she came behind the bar to grab a fresh pitcher. Their eyes met in the mirror above the bottles. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, just held the contact for 2 full seconds, then turned away. Marco finished his drink, left cash, and stepped outside. He waited in the alley behind the kitchen, same spot he'd used 100 times for quiet conversations that couldn't happen inside. The air smelled of garlic, exhaust, and rain that hadn't fallen yet. She came out at 11:47 a.m., coat over her arm, hair down now. She saw him and stopped. You're persistent, she said in English. Soft accent, almost no trace of the dialect from the night before. You spoke to me like you knew exactly who I was, he answered, and what I was about to do. Elena glanced toward the mouth of the alley, then back at him. I overhear things. People forget waitresses have ears. Enough to know about shell companies and backdoor transfers. She shrugged one shoulder. Enough to know when someone's about to get robbed in broad daylight. Marco stepped closer, slow, careful. You could have stayed quiet. Safer. Da maybe. She met his eyes. But I've watched people lose everything before. My father trusted, sir. The wrong partner once. Car never made it home. I was 16. I remember what that kind of betrayal looks like on someone's face. The words landed heavier than she probably intended. Marco felt them settle somewhere deep. So you decided to save mine. I decided to give you a choice. Her voice stayed even. What you do with it is on you. Silence stretched between them. A delivery truck rumbled past on the cross street. Somewhere nearby, Laughter spilled from an open window. Marco tilted his head. Why the Sicilian? She hesitated for the first time. Habit. When I'm serious, it comes out. Nana used to say it's the only language truth sounds right in. He almost smiled. She wasn't wrong. Elena shifted her weight. If that's all, I'd like to go home. One more thing. He pulled a plain white card from his inside pocket. No name. No logo. Just a number. If you ever hear anything else, anything at all, call this. No questions. No strings. She looked at the card like it might bite. After a long moment, she took it. I'm not your informant, Mr. Vitale. I know. He held her gaze. But you're not invisible either. Not to me. She slipped the card into her coat pocket without looking at it again. Good night, she said quietly. Marco watched her walk away head high, steps sure until she turned the corner and disappeared. He stood there longer than he should have. Back at the penthouse, he opened the contract again, read every line, every clause, every footnote. Then he, picked up the phone. Luca, he said when the line connected. Kill the transfer. Tell the Russians we're out. A beat of silence. You sure? Marco thought of Elena's voice in the dark. Thought of the way she hadn't flinched. Yeah, he said. I'm sure. He hung up, poured a whiskey, and sat on the couch staring at nothing. For the first time in years, the weight in his chest felt different. Not lighter, exactly. Just shifted. The days after that alley conversation felt like walking on glass, sharp, fragile, every step deliberate. Marco didn't go back to La Luna Rossa for 3 nights. He told himself it was strategy. Give her space. Let the Russians feel the withdrawal without him hovering like a ghost. In reality, he was afraid of what might happen if he saw her again too soon. Afraid he'd ask questions he didn't want answers to. Afraid she'd look at him like he was just another man in a suit who thought the world bent to his name. But Lucas' updates came anyway. Discreet surveillance, nothing intrusive, just confirmation she was safe. She worked her shifts, walked home the same route, stopped at the same bodega for milk and bread. Routine. Ordinary. It infuriated Marco how much that ordinariness pulled at him. On the 4th night, he couldn't stay away. He arrived after 10, when the dinner rush had thinned to stragglers nursing espresso and cannoli. He took the bar stool again, same one, ordered the same Negroni. Elena was in the dining room, clearing a 4-top near the windows. She saw him the moment he sat down. Her eyes flicked up, held for a beat, then returned to the table. No surprise, no warmth, just acknowledgement. When she finally came behind the bar to pick up a drink order, she didn't speak at first, just reached for a bottle of sparkling water, filled a glass, set it on her tray. Then, quietly, in English, "You're not signing." It wasn't a question. Marco turned the stem of his glass between his fingers. No. She nodded once, small. Good. She started to turn away. Elena. She paused. Why did you keep the card? He asked. Her shoulders rose and fell in a tiny shrug. Haven't needed it yet. Yet. She met his eyes, then direct, unflinching. I don't make promises I can't keep. If I hear something worth saying, I'll say it. That's all. Marco studied her. The way the low lights caught the faint scar above her left eyebrow, old, faded. The way her fingers curled slightly around the tray, not nervous, just ready. Always ready. I don't want you involved, he said. A small, almost amused breath escaped her. A little late for that, she walked away before he could answer. The next evening he didn't sit at the bar. He waited outside after closing. Same alley, same shadow against the brick. Rain had started light, steady, turning the pavement glossy black. Elena stepped out, umbrella in hand, coat collar turned up. She saw him and didn't stop walking, just opened the umbrella and tilted it toward him in silent invitation. He fell into step beside her. They walked in silence for 2 blocks, past shuttered storefronts, past a bodega still glowing yellow, past a couple arguing quietly under an awning. The rain drummed softly on the nylon above them. At the corner where her street turned off, she stopped. You're following me home now? She asked. Not angry, curious maybe, making sure you get there safe. She looked at him sideways. I've been getting home safe for 29 years without Marco Vitale playing bodyguard. I know. He shoved his hands deeper into his pockets. Doesn't change the fact that you put yourself in my line of sight, and people in my world, they notice. Elena studied the rain-slick sidewalk for a long moment. I'm not afraid of your world. You should be, maybe. She lifted one shoulder. But fear's a luxury I ran out of a long time ago. Another silence. The rain picked up, tapping insistently. Marco spoke first. There's a place I go when the city gets too loud. A cafe in Astoria. Mine. Closed tonight. No one else. Just coffee and quiet. Come with me, 1 hour. No business, no warnings, just talk. She looked up at him, then really looked, searching his face like she was trying to find the trap. Why? Because the last time someone spoke Sicilian to me like that, it was my grandmother. And she's been gone 15 years. Hearing it again, it felt like breathing after holding my breath too long. Elena's expression softened just a fraction, but enough. 1 hour, she said. Sir. Then I go home. He nodded. They took his car-black sedan, no markings, driver silent in the front. The ride was quiet. Elena watched the city slide past the window, rain streaking the glass. Marco watched her. The cafe was small, tucked between a laundromat and a butcher shop. Inside smelled of fresh ground beans and cinnamon. Lights low, tables empty. Marco locked the door behind them, flipped the sign to closed, and went behind the counter like he'd done it 1,000 times. He made espresso the old way slow, precise. No machine, just a mocha pot on a single burner. Elena sat on a stool, coat draped over the back, watching his hands. When he set the cups down, steam curling between them, she spoke first. My nana used to say espresso should taste like regret and second chances in the same sip. Marco's mouth curved. Smart woman. She was. Elena lifted her cup. To second chances then. They clinked porcelain softly. Conversation came easier than either expected. She told him about Palermo's summer sticky heat, Nana's tiny balcony overlooking a courtyard where laundry hung like flags, the smell of capers and sea salt. How she'd learned the dialect by listening to old women argue over laundry lines, how the words felt heavier, truer than English ever did. Marco told her about his own childhood running through olive groves outside Agrigento, stealing figs, hiding from his father's temper, how the family came to America when he was 12, how the city swallowed the boy. Sir. He'd been and spat out someone harder. Hours slipped. The rain stopped. The mocha pot cooled on the stove. At some point Elena laughed quiet, surprised Dad a story he told about the time he and Luca tried to borrow a Vespa and ended up in a ditch. The sound caught him off guard, warm, real. When the clock above the counter showed past 2, she glanced at it and sighed. I should go. Marco stood when she did, walked her to the door. Outside, the street was empty, washed clean. Streetlights pooled gold on wet asphalt. Thank you, he said, for tonight. She looked up at him close enough now that he could see the flecks of green in her hazel eyes. Don't thank me yet, she said softly. I still don't know what I'm doing here. Neither do I. A small smile touched her mouth. Honest, I like that. She stepped back, opened her umbrella again even though the rain had stopped. Good night, Marco. He watched her walk away until she turned the corner. Back inside the cafe, he didn't leave right away. He sat at the counter, staring at the 2 empty cups, the faint lipstick mark on hers. For the first time in longer than he could remember, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like possibility. The next morning Marco woke before dawn, the city still dark beyond the windows. He lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the cafe conversation in his head the way Elena's laugh had surprised them both, the way her fingers had brushed his when she reached for the sugar. Small things, sir. Dangerous things. He didn't text her, didn't call. Instead, he sent flowers to the restaurant's simple white roses. No card, just his initials on the envelope. When Luca raised an eyebrow over breakfast, Marco only said, "Let it be." Elena didn't mention the flowers when he showed up that evening. She was behind the bar, polishing glasses during the slow mid-shift lull. He took his usual stool. She poured his Negroni without asking, set it down, then leaned her elbows on the wood. Roses are nice, she said quietly. Subtle even. I can do subtle. A small smile tugged at her mouth. You're not very good at it. He chuckled low, surprised at himself. Apparently not. She glanced around, no one close enough to hear, then switched to Sicilian, soft and quick. You're playing with fire, you know. I've been playing with fire my whole life. He answered in the same dialect. This one feels different. Her eyes searched his for a long moment. Then she straightened. Shift ends at 11. If you're still here, maybe we walk. He stayed. When the last table left and the lights dimmed to cleaning level, Elena untied her apron, hung it on the hook, and came out the front door. Marco was waiting on the sidewalk, hands in pockets, collar turned up against the cool night. They walked toward the East River, no destination, just movement. The path along the water was quiet, joggers gone, tourists back in hotels. Street lamps cast long shadows. Elena kept her hands in her coat pockets. Marco, sir, matched her pace. After several blocks she spoke. I looked you up. After the first night. He wasn't surprised. And enough to know the headlines don't tell the whole story. She glanced sideways. Enough to know you've lost people too. Marco's jaw tightened for a second, then relaxed. My mother, cancer, quick. My father, different story. Heart attack they called it. I called it consequences. She nodded slowly. Nana said the life takes more than it gives. But she also said sometimes it gives back when you least expect it. They stopped at a railing overlooking the water. Brooklyn lights shimmered across the river like scattered coins. A barge slid past, low and silent. Marco turned to face her. I don't want to drag you into anything, Elena. I mean that. I know. She met his eyes. But I'm already here. I chose to speak that night. I choose to keep talking now. He reached out slowly, gave her time to step back. She didn't. His fingers brushed hers, tentative. She turned her hand palm up, their fingers laced together, warm against cold night air. Neither spoke for a while. Just stood there, hands linked, watching the city breathe. When they finally started walking again, the silence felt different, easier, fuller. The pattern formed without words. Marco found excuses to be near the restaurant more often. A business dinner that ended early so he could wait in the alley. A late-night coffee run that conveniently passed her block. Each time they talked longer, laughed, more. Shared pieces neither had shared with anyone else in years. One night, after a particularly long shift, Elena was exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders tight. Marco drove her home instead of letting her take the subway. She didn't argue. In the car, quiet jazz on low, she leaned her head against the window. You don't have to do this, she murmured. I want to. She turned to look at him. Why me? He kept his eyes on the road. Because when you spoke that night, it wasn't just a warning. It was the first honest thing anyone said to me in years. No agenda, no fear, just truth. Eleanor reached over and touched his arm lightly. You deserve more than half-truths, Marco. He glanced at her then long enough that the car drifted half a lane before he corrected. So do you. They pulled up outside her building. Neither moved to get out. She unbuckled slowly. Come up, just for tea. I don't want to be alone tonight. He followed her up 4 flights of narrow stairs. Her apartment was small, clean, lived in, books stacked on every surface, a tiny balcony overlooking an air shaft. She put water on for tea, moved around the kitchen like she'd done it 1,000 times in the dark. They sat on the couch with mismatched mugs, spearmint steam curling between them. Elena spoke first. I haven't let anyone in here since Nana died. Marco set his mug down. I haven't let anyone close since... longer than that. She looked at him, really looked. Then she leaned in, slow enough, sir. He could stop her. He didn't. The kiss started gentle, testing, careful. Then it deepened. Years of walls cracking open. Her hands in his hair, his arms around her waist. When they pulled apart, both breathing uneven, foreheads touching. This is complicated, she whispered. I know. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I'm not asking you to hide who you are. She smiled against his mouth. Good. They didn't sleep that night, not really. They talked until dawn, kissed until lips were swollen, held each other until the city woke around them. When morning light slanted through the blinds, Elena traced the line of his jaw with her fingertip. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too, but I'm not running. He kissed her temple. Neither am I. Outside, the world kept turning deals, threats, the endless grind of the life. But in that small apartment, for those few hours, it all felt very far away. Marco left before her next shift, kissed her at the door, promised to see her that night. As he walked down the stairs, phone buzzing with messages he ignored, he realized something simple and terrifying. He was falling, and for once he didn't want to stop. The first weeks after that night felt like stepping into sunlight after years in shadow. Marco didn't push. He didn't need to. Elena kept her routine shifts at La Luna Rossa, early mornings at the small gym near her building, quiet evenings with books or old records, but now there were new threads woven in. A text from Marco at Sir. The end of her shift. Home safe? A quick reply from her. Yes. You. Simple. Steady. Enough to make the long walk home feel shorter. He started picking her up after closing twice a week. No grand gestures, just the black sedan pulling up quietly, driver nodding once, Marco in the back with 2 coffees in paper cups. They'd drive aimlessly sometimes along the FDR, past the bridges lit gold at Nitor Park near the river, and talk until the cups went cold. One night, rain drumming on the roof, Elena rested her head on his shoulder. I used to hate the rain, she said. Nana said it washed away sins. I never believed her. Marco turned his face into her hair. Do you now? She lifted her head, met his eyes. Starting to. He kissed her then slow, unhurried, like they had all the time in the world. The driver pretended not to notice, but the world outside didn't stop turning. Luca called Marco the next morning, voice low, careful. The Russians didn't take the pullout quietly. They're talking to the Albanians, spreading word you're soft, weak on deals. There's chatter about a message, nothing concrete yet, but they're circling. Marco listened from the kitchen of his penthouse, coffee forgotten on the counter. Keep listening, he said, and double the watch on her building. Quietly. Luca hesitated. She know? Not yet. Marco ended the call and stared out at the river. The city looked peaceful from 30 floors up. It never was. That evening he met Elena at the restaurant after. Her shift. She came out smiling small, tired, but real. He took her hand as they walked. I need to tell you something, he said. She squeezed his fingers. I'm listening. He told her everything Luca's call, the whispers, the way his refusal of the deal had painted a target. Not just on him, on anyone close. Elena stopped under a street lamp, looked up at him. So they know about me. They suspect. She exhaled slowly. Then we don't hide. Marco shook his head. I can move you somewhere safe, a place upstate. Or no. Her voice was firm. I'm not running. Not from this. Not from you. He searched her face. Elena, I chose this the night I spoke to you. I knew who you were. I still chose. He pulled her close, arms tight around her. I don't deserve that. You do. She tilted her head back. But you have to let me stand beside you, not behind you. He kissed her forehead. Okay. The next few days blurred. Marco met with his men's small, trusted circle, plans drawn quietly, increased security without panic, eyes on known Russian associates, ears in every corner. Elena went to work as usual, but now she noticed the subtle changes, a man reading a newspaper across the street from her building every morning, another lingering near the restaurant's back door at closing. She didn't mention it to Marco. She just carried on. One busy Friday night, a table of 4 men came in sharp suits, quiet voices, Eastern European accents. Elena served them. She listened while she poured. Wine, cleared plates, refilled bread. Fragments drifted up. Vitale thinks he's untouchable. Tomorrow night, the warehouse on Van Brunt. Make it clean. No witnesses. Her hands stayed steady. She slipped into the kitchen, pulled out her phone, texted Marco one line. Warehouse Van Brunt. Tomorrow night, they're coming for you. His reply came in seconds. Stay inside. I'm sending someone. She didn't stay inside. When her shift ended, she waited until the restaurant quieted, then slipped out the back. Marco's man was there, young, serious, waiting in a dark SUV. She climbed in without a word. Take me to him, she said. The driver hesitated. Boss said I know what he said. Take me. He drove. They met Marco blocks away from the warehouse dark street, rain starting again. He stepped out of his car the moment he saw her. What the hell are you doing here? I heard more than I texted. She climbed out, coat damp. They're bringing extra men. Back up in the lot across the street. They want it to look like a rival hit pin it on someone else. Marco's face was stone. You shouldn't be anywhere near this. Too late. She stepped closer. I'm already here. He looked at her fierce, soaked, unaffrodden. Something in him broke open. He pulled her against him, kissed her hard, tasting rain and fear and certainty. "Stay in the car," he said against her mouth. "Please." She nodded. Marco signaled his men. They moved silent, practiced. Elena waited in the SUV, heart hammering, watching shadows shift across the wet pavement. The confrontation was quick, no guns drawn in the open. Marco's team flanked the Russians before they could move. Words exchanged low, lethal. The leader's face went pale when Marco repeated every detail Elena had overheard. They disarmed without a fight, bound, taken away for a conversation that would end the threat without bodies in the river. Marco came back to the car 30 minutes later, wet through, breathing hard. He slid in beside her, pulled her into his lap without a word, held her like she might disappear. "You saved me," he whispered. Again, she touched his face. "We save each other." They drove back to the penthouse in silence. Inside, he locked the door, pulled her into the shower, fully clothed, warm water washing away rain and tension. Clothes peeled away slowly, skin against skin, no rush, just need, trust, relief. Later, tangled in sheets, her head on his chest, Elena traced the scar on his shoulder, an old one, from before her time. "I'm not going anywhere," she said softly. He kissed the top of her head. "Good. Because I'm not letting you." Outside, the city glittered on, dangerous, beautiful, endless. Inside, for the first time, Marco felt something close to peace. The months that followed the warehouse night felt like the slow exhale after holding your breath for too long. Marco didn't pretend the life vanished overnight. It didn't work that way. But he made changes, quiet, deliberate ones. He handed off, more day-to-day operations to Luca and a handful of others he trusted. The waterfront project shifted, fully legitimate. No more Russian money, no hidden strings. Architects, permits, press releases. Clean lines on paper and in public. He still carried the name Vitale, still commanded respect in rooms where respect mattered, but the edges softened. Fewer late-night calls, fewer shadows at his back. Elena watched it happen without comment at first. She kept her job at La Luna Rossa for another 6 months stubbornly, because it was hers, but eventually let Marco convince her to take over the restaurant's books part-time. She had a mind for numbers that surprised even him, spotting discrepancies in supplier invoices, negotiating better wine deals, turning small profits into steady ones. The staff noticed the change too. The place felt warmer, less like a stage for power plays, and more like a home. They moved in together quietly. Not the penthouse at first, that felt too much like his old life. Instead, a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, 3 floors, a small garden out back, windows that caught morning light over the promenade. Elena filled it with books and plants, and the smell of Nana's recipes. She'd started cooking again. Marco came home to Sicilian baking in the oven, to her humming old Sicilian songs while she chopped onions. Simple things, sacred things. One Sunday morning, 6 months after the warehouse, he found her in the garden pruning roses, sunlight caught in her hair. She looked up when he stepped outside, coffee mug in each hand. "Marry me," he said. No preamble, no ring in a velvet box, just the words, quiet and sure. Elena set the shears down slowly, wiped her hands on her jeans, walked to him. "You're asking in a garden at 7 in the morning? I'm asking because I wake up every day knowing I want the rest of them with you. No more waiting." She took the coffee from his hand, sipped once, then set it on the stone wall. "Yeah." He exhaled like he'd been holding the breath since that first night in the booth, pulled her close, kissed her until they both forgot the coffee was getting cold. They married a year later in Sicily, not Palermo, too many eyes. A small village outside Agrigento, the same one his grandmother had grown up in. A stone chapel on a hill overlooking olive groves and the sea. No press, no spectacle, just 30 people. Luca, a few cousins, Elena's old friend from the restaurant who flew over, Marco's sister who cried through the whole ceremony. Elena wore white cotton simple, sleeveless, a thin gold chain at her throat with the Sicilian protection charm he'd given her years before. Marco in a linen suit, no tie. When the priest asked if they took each other, they answered in Sicilian, low, clear, the dialect rolling through the chapel like a promise carved in stone. Afterward, long tables under grapevines, wine from the local cooperative, music, accordion and guitar, old songs everyone knew the words to. Elena danced, barefoot on the grass. Marco watched her like she was the only light in the world. They stayed a month, walked the same paths he'd run as a boy, ate at the same trattoria his grandmother had loved, spoke the dialect freely, without looking over their shoulders. For the first time, the language felt like celebration instead of warning. Back in New York, life settled deeper. 2 years later, Elena gave birth to a daughter, Sophia, named for Marco's mother. Dark curls like her own, Marco's serious eyes. 3 years after that, another girl, Isabella, quieter, thoughtful, already asking for stories in Sicilian before she could speak full sentences. Marco taught them both the old songs while Elena cooked. They spent summers in Sicily, now small house near the sea. No bodyguards, just family. The girls ran through olive groves, collected figs, learned the dialect from village nonnes who pinched their cheeks and called them beautiful. The restaurant thrived. Eleanor ran it full-time eventually, turning it into something more, a place where people lingered, where stories were told over long dinners. Marco stopped by most nights, after the girls were asleep, sat in the corner booth, the same one, and watched his wife move through the room like she owned every inch of it, which she did. 10 years after that first frozen moment, they returned to La Luna Rossa on their anniversary. The place had changed, in new lighting, fresh paint, but the booth was the same. Same view of the door, same chandelier, scattering gold. They sat across from each other, hands linked on the tablecloth. The restaurant hummed around them, couples laughing, glasses clinking, the low jazz still playing. Elena traced the back of his hand with her thumb. "Remember when I said this is fake?" Marco smiled slow. "Real. How could I forget? You froze the room. And me. You thawed pretty quickly." He leaned forward. "Because you were the truth I didn't know I was waiting for." She lifted his hand, kissed his knuckles softly. "I love you, Marco Vitale. Every complicated, dangerous, beautiful part. I love you, Elena Vitale, more than the life ever let me believe I could." They sat there long after dessert, long after most tables emptied. The staff knew better than to rush them. When the lights finally dimmed to closing, Marco stood, offered his hand. She took it. Outside, the city glittered, same streets, same rain-slick sidewalks, same endless pulse. But they walked home slowly, arm in arm, the weight of years between them light now, comfortable, chosen. If this story moved you the way a single honest moment can change everything, the quiet strength it takes to choose love over fear, please hit that like button. Drop a comment with the part that hit you hardest. And if you want more stories like this, twists, heart, second chances, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's always another secret waiting to be spoken. See you in the next one.